You're an agribusiness executive navigating an increasingly competitive market while trying to grow your company. Mergers and acquisitions are pitched as an accelerant to growth, but many M&A deals destroy more value than they create. Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod, where we explore and reveal the perspectives, insights, and approaches for successful mergers and acquisitions. Here's your host, the Integration Pacesetter, Joe Mosier.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pacesetter Pod. As always, I am your host, Joe Mosier, founder and principal advisor of Mosier Consulting Group, where we work with leaders of small and lower middle market food and agribusiness firms to de-risk strategy and mergers and acquisitions, helping you produce better results in less time and less disruption. And I want to start today's episode by asking you to ponder a question. What do you think of when you think about running a post-M&A integration effort? Whether you've done it before or not, what comes to mind? Would you run it like a team or a department in your company? Or maybe would you run it like a subgroup of the executive team? Would you run it like a task force? Or maybe you'd run it like a project. If you're like most first-time or even first in a long time acquirers, you likely have not given this much thought. Or maybe you have. But even in the process of giving it thought and reflection, you're struggling to put words and definition to what you have in your head. When I ask this question to agribusiness leaders, they typically arrive at one of two camps. Either one, they say, well, Joe, we'll give it to our best people. They know our business and they know how to run a business. Or they might say, we'll give it to one of our project managers. They are well equipped and skilled at getting a team together, assigning them work, and managing the schedule. And both of these have kernels of truth to them. Both of them are partially accurate, but both remain fundamentally wrong. So when it comes to managing your mergers and acquisitions, there's something you need to know. This is not business as usual. Running your integration like you run your business is going to backfire. Businesses are structural and ongoing, whereas integrations are episodic, temporary, and time-bound. Where businesses have fixed boundaries of roles, functions, processes, departments, etc., integrations are iterative and they evolve over time. So you might be saying, okay, they're episodic, they're temporary, they're time-bound, they're iterative, they evolve. That sounds a lot like a project. So why not treat the integration like a project? Well, if you apply standard project management approach in your integration efforts within your business, a number of things will happen. You're going to grind gears. You're going to frustrate your customers. There's a good chance some of your best people may leave. And for sure, you're going to destroy value. Projects require strict management. Businesses also require management, plus vision, purpose, and leadership. And integrations require all of that as well, but they require governance. And that's what we want to talk about today. So when I talk about integrations requiring governance, there's 3 points that I want to make. The first is that integration is not routine operations. This sounds obvious, and I wish that it were. The reality is that many businesses, particularly those that are without an intentional approach to integration, are going to default back to how they tackle big challenges and how they resolve issues in the course of day-to-day operations. When they meet the friction of an integration, the complexity of the plan, the enormity of the challenge, they're going to slide back into what they know best, which is how to run their business. And this produces terrible outcomes. So integrations are specific, acute events that occupy a narrow moment in the overall history of your company. But in that narrow moment where they exist, while they're happening, they put tremendous pressure on every aspect of your business in ways that an individual problem may not show up in day-to-day operations. And integrations going to impact your customers and the way that you serve them. And integration is going to impact your products and services and the way you produce and deliver them. The integration is going to impact all of your processes and the way that you apply them, the way that you measure them, the way that you revise them. It's going to impact your people, as well as the way that you attract talent and retain talent, engage them and reward them. Integration plans aim to be targeted and surgical. That's what we're all going for. But while they aim to be targeted or surgical, they often hit the organization like a blunt object. So where you imagine that you're using an Allen wrench to manage your integration, the impact of the overall effort makes the business feel like it just got hit with a sledgehammer. And if you fail to recognize the difference between standard business operations and integration, you're going to create not just bad outcomes for your merger and acquisition, but you're going to disrupt your underlying business performance, which is potentially one of the worst things you can do. When you're undertaking an acquisition, you're looking for 1 + 1 to equal 2.5 or 3 or 4, and managed poorly without the right perspectives and right preparation, 1 + 1 can equal 1.1 or 1.2. So sometimes it feels like M&A integrations are where business momentum goes to die. And for me, that is rooted in the fact that we often look to manage our integrations as if they were business as usual. So back to the point, if it's not business as usual, it must be a project, right? Well, the second point for today is that integration is not a routine project either. So companies that excel at project management, and maybe your firm is one of them, maybe you've got great capabilities, great people, great processes and tools around how you deploy capital projects, or perhaps how you adopt and implement new technologies, or maybe how you tackle inefficiencies in back office processes. Whatever it is, if you are good at project management, you are better positioned for integration success. But that alone is still not a given. So first, unlike conventional projects and project management best practices, integrations want perfect clarity, but generally have to rely upon being directionally correct. So compare your average project with the traditional scope of cost, schedule, scope with your integration. Within a traditional project, the objectives are clear. We're building this facility at this place, at this time, for this cost, with these features. Within your integration, your objectives may be clear, but they're imprecise. Think about a traditional project. The scope is fixed. Again, we know the size of the building. We know the number of floors. We know the equipment that those floors need to support. We know what the access and egress points are. When it comes to integration, the scope is fluid, and it's going to adjust as more is learned throughout the journey. So if we give this an example, you may make a firm but preliminary scope pre-closing integration about what it is that you believe you're going to undertake. But that scope is likely to change once you have full, unrestricted access to the acquired company post-close. The reality is pre-close, there's an asymmetry of information. Even during due diligence, there's things that remain unknown because you didn't ask for them or you didn't have access to them for anti-competitive purposes. And once you own the business, you now have access to information, and that will likely adjust the scope, the pace, the focus of some of your integration activities. But this doesn't happen in traditional project management. The idea of changing the scope after you get started in traditional project management would look like breaking ground on building that new plant. But once you've got in there and you've moved some dirt around, you decide that you're going to build something different than what the engineers designed. You decide you're going to construct something different than the agencies approved in the permits. That doesn't work. And that is where traditional project management can struggle to accommodate the needs of integration management. In both a traditional project and an integration project, value is paramount. But in integration, it's also elusive. And sometimes it requires creativity to get to the value. Creativity in an integration plan can't easily be plotted on a Gantt chart, and it can't be codified along a critical path. The other key aspect here is that traditional projects don't generally find that they apply a lot of pressure to your underlying cultural norms or the practices or behaviors of your organization. But integration, conversely, will seek out and chase down culture wherever it finds it. Integration creates consistent pressure on culture. And so what I have found is that most project management methodologies and tools that are used in the food and agribusiness space are generally outmatched or unprepared for the kind of resistance that comes with a force like integration, impacting all aspects of a business and putting pressure on culture. And finally, integrations produce some really volatile environments with high tension and lots of stored energy. And it's an outcome of all these pressures that are being applied. And if you are, in the course of an integration, creating cultural tension, creating tension among your people of the legacy company and the acquired company, if you're creating tension among your customers, if you're creating tension among your departments, tension among your technologies, tension among your structures, if you start to apply traditional standard project management tactics of fixed schedules and non-negotiable scopes, you're going to create friction. And that friction can become an ignition source. And so if the pressure is high enough and the conditions are bad enough, that ignition source can prompt an explosion of sorts. And that explosion has a pretty big blast radius that'll echo down through your business results for a long time. And so again, the point to be made here is that yes, you must manage your integration like a project, but it's not like any other project you've ever done before. Integration management and governance is as much about mindset as it is about tools. And so that brings us to our third and final point today. So if integrations aren't business as usual, and if integrations aren't projects as usual, what are they? Integrations are transformations. And transformations are served best with governance first and management second. So I'll talk a little bit more about what that means.
Poorly executed mergers and acquisitions destroy more value than they create. They can set your company back years. To defend your firm's position in the marketplace, you need access to the leading practices that unlock the greater potential of your people, processes, and systems. If you are undertaking a company transformation or pursuing an acquisition as a vehicle to grow, set up a call with Joe by visiting www.moshercg.com.
At the Mosher Consulting Group, we use a three-legged stool approach for governance of M&A integration efforts with our clients. The legs of that stool are 1, the integration sponsor, 2, an integration steering team, and 3, an integration manager. So let's take a couple minutes here and walk through which each of these mean and why they are so important for you as you start to embark upon your own M&A journey. First is the integration sponsor. The integration sponsor is a senior executive leader typically who leads the effort internally and ensures that all integration activities are going to deliver the positive benefits that were expected from the original deal. So the integration sponsor is generally accountable for all the outcomes of the integration, and they are a critical actor in making sure that barriers and obstacles are removed when needed. A leading practice that we often recommend that contributes to long-term M&A success is to have the original deal sponsor also serve as an integration sponsor. Historically, there's been a disconnect between the deal incentives and the integration incentives. So the deal incentives are, quote unquote, getting the deal done, and integration incentives would be conversely ensuring the done deal generates value. And historically, many organizations have had a separate deal leader from the integration leader, which creates disconnect, things get lost, priorities shift, assumptions are challenged or forgotten, and over time, the focus of the integration and the results of the integration may not reflect the intent and the objectives of the original deal. And so having a single individual, the integration sponsor, serving in both capacities as the deal sponsor and the integration sponsor has the benefit of ensuring that all those core deal objectives are upheld throughout the M&A lifecycle. And it also ensures that those senior sponsors are involved through to the end. Those senior sponsors who went in front of the board and campaigned for the pretty significant capital outlays for the acquisition. The senior officials who accepted the risks and said the risks, while material, are worth it in exchange for the opportunities that this acquisition provides. And all the commercial assumptions or synergy assumptions that were made. Having that same person involved through the end ensures, again, continuity of objectives, but also continuity of accountability. So the second leg of that stool is what I generally refer to as the integration steering team. And the steering team, it sounds official, but basically it's a body that's going to review and approve integration plans. So what does it mean to review and approve? They are the group that's going to be accountable for ensuring that project plans are complete. They're going to make sure that the plans are progressing as required. They're going to ask the right questions and prompt and prod to ensure that risks have been identified and managed. They're going to ensure the right stakeholders have been engaged, and they're going to ensure that the right resources have been secured to support the integration. So they're an advisory role, but they share accountability for the success of the integration, and they ensure that the people assigned to the work are doing what they need to do to deliver the best plan, which is then in turn going to deliver the best results. The integration sponsor is generally a member of the steering team. And when possible, I would also recommend that both the acquiring business and the acquired business are represented on the steering team. Now, there's a time error here. Many times before a deal closes, it's not possible to bring in senior officers of the acquired company into your integration planning activities. It could be due to parameters outlined within the purchase agreement. It could be for jumping the gun, rules and regulations. It could be for anti-competitive purposes. But even if you can't bring in officials from the acquired company pre-close, it's always good to bring them in as soon as possible after the close. So in terms of number, there's no specific minimums or maximums for steering team participation that I would ever recommend, other than I usually get nervous when the group is growing beyond 7 or 8 people. A couple of reasons. One, it's a heck of a lot harder to get that size of a group together consistently. It's a lot harder to get them together, keep them all engaged, keep them all informed. And frankly, as the group grows bigger, it leads not to more decision input, but it's more decision dilution. When everybody decides, nobody decides. And where that ownership vacuum is created, a lot of finger pointing will take its place. And so I generally look for something between 5 and 8, though it can be fluid based on the size and nature of your businesses and the acquisition. And if you remember anything else about the steering team and their role, I hope it's this. The steering team is a decision-making body. This is not a venue for communications and stakeholder management. Do not make the mistake of inviting people into an integration governance role as a means for getting their buy-in. Yes, of course, you want people to support what you're doing. Yes, of course, you want people to feel heard and involved and have a chance to contribute. But the integration governance may not be the spot for that. And so you got to be very careful that you're not offering somebody a vote in exchange for their support. One, participation in governance does not automatically create buy-in. And the downside is that you may be handing out voting rights to people that don't need them, and people are not going to exercise them to the benefit of the company. So again, remember, integration governance is about making decisions. It's not about reaching consensus. If you're concerned about engaging the broader part of your organizations and make sure they understand, they contribute and can support to the integration and the mergers, then that falls on the integration planning activities. And that brings us to the third leg of the stool, the integration manager. The integration manager is the individual who leads the development of the integration plan and will manage the plan execution. So they're accountable for designing a complete and effective plan. They're going to identify the resources that are needed, when they are needed, the dependencies that exist within the plan, the risks the plan needs to manage and watch out for, the communications that need to happen. This is a role that you can source from your existing project managers if you keep PMs on staff. But a more effective approach is to put someone with business acumen, your organization's culture and cultural fluency, and some organizational clout into that position. Yes, they need to manage the project, but they also need to be key to leading the change, which is sometimes different from traditional project management. So if you have someone who fits the bill perfectly for integration manager in terms of business acumen, cultural fluency, organizational clout, but they're not experienced in project management, then you may want to assign them a PM to do the strict PM type activities. But just remember that being a PM alone does not qualify someone for an integration manager. In terms of integration governance participation, the integration manager generally reports to the sponsor within the context of the project. And the integration manager will also attend the steering team meetings, but she or he is not usually an official voting member. A final point on this, and something that comes up that's worth mentioning, and that's something called the integration advisor. So it's outside the standard three-legged stool. But an integration advisor is an external party that you might engage early on to help you manage the process of developing the integration strategy and plan. And this is particularly useful for companies that don't have a lot of deal flow or a lot of historical experience managing integrations. The advisor would be accountable along with the sponsor for designing the plan, the communications, the risk management, and other duties necessary. But they would eventually then transition that plan into the hands of an internal resource who would take on management of it. So if you're finding that you don't have somebody that's going to be able to step up and help you create a plan that you feel confident, addresses the risks, drives the right objectives, delivers the right performance, you may also look at a temporary advisor to help in the creation of that plan. So let's recap what we covered today. You cannot run your integration like you run your business. Why? It's not business as usual. It's not a project as usual. And for integration, you don't need supervision. you need clear and battle-tested governance. So if you're in the midst of an integration, if you're getting ready to undertake one, or if you're exploring if M&A may be suitable to you, I would encourage you to think about how you will govern your effort. And remember that this is going to test your business, your people, your systems, and your processes like nothing else. And you definitely want to be prepared. So that's all we have today. And I hope you'll join us next time where we're going to explore how integrations are won or lost. Not on the quality of your people or the depth of your plan, but on the strength of your mindset. So I hope you'll join us and listen in for that one next week. Thank you as always for joining this episode of the Pacesetter Pod. I invite you to follow me, Joe Mosier, and the Mosier Consulting Group on LinkedIn, where we regularly post ideas, observations, and reflections to help you win at executing strategy in M&A in your agribusiness. And of course, please hit subscribe on your podcast player to ensure you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review. I appreciate you and I hope you have a safe day. Thanks.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.